This is January 2nd. This is our second show, and we're so excited because this is where civility is always in style. And you're listening to KXEX 1550 AM, and I'm so excited about what's taking place, and we've got some special guests with us today I'll introduce to you in just a minute. But think about this, folks. We're starting a new year, 2022, absolutely amazing. And when you think about all of the New Year's resolutions that people make and how many of them actually get done, very, very few. And I like to call them maybe a New Year's perhapses. And I think a lot of folks will identify with that, because whether you're losing weight or exercising or wanting to change the way you treat your kids or whatever it is, there are a lot of things that happen, and we're in for a special year because we're going to try to get through all this crazy COVID stuff. And once again, Omicron now, and I mean, there's a new variant just about every week that comes along. But you know what? We're going to find ways to get through, and we're going to be civil to one another as we do it, and we're going to have a great time this year because we're choosing to do so. Well, let me tell you what. We've got a wonderful couple with us today. Matt and Kerry Perkins are two friends of mine from People's Church, and they're doing some really unique things at church. First of all, Matt, tell me a little bit. What's your day job? What do you do when, other than this? We're going to talk about grief in a minute. But
well, thank you so much for the opportunity to be with you and share. I am actually a worship pastor at People's Church, and I've been a worship and creative arts pastor for nearly 30 years. And so
you just finished the season, so Christmas just got done, and
yep. So we
great time.
Take a little bit of a stress relief getting through that time, and you just mentioned of getting through all the COVID thing, of just how you do church, how do you approach these things, and it's always different and it's always changing.
Yeah.
Which I guess for a creative, and when you are trying to do different things, the variety is can be a fun thing.
It can. Absolutely. And Kerry, what do you do? I know the grief that we're going to talk about and the program that you offer is absolutely fantastic, but what do you do in real life?
Oh, well, I manage the household, and I work at Valley Children's.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about that. So what do you do there?
It's a wonderful job. I recently got it this last year, and the privilege to be able to walk in and to serve the kids that are going through their own, sicknesses or whatever, and then their families,
sure,
and then the nurses. And so I am a patient care technician.
Oh, I love it.
So I get to serve.
Yeah, fantastic. I have 4 grandkids, 6, 8, 12, and 14. And I think they live there. You know how that is.
Yeah.
But the 6 and 8-year-old, they have a risk gene that is very, very high, and they run into everything. They just shouldn't go through the walls and through the door. You know how that is.
Yeah, that's more exciting.
It really is.
I know, because I have children the same way.
Yeah. Well, and the head of the hospital, Todd Suntrapak, is a fantastic guy. Does a lot of really good things in the community, and I love him. So, but this COVID thing has really made it tough on a lot of families and a lot of kids, because now the 5 through 12-year-olds get their shots as well. And the grandkids just finished 2 of them, their second one. So, it was, and the good news for us is the dosage is less, so it doesn't impact them quite the same. But they ended up no pain, which was good. So even the shot didn't hurt. So for all of you out there with those, 5 to 12-year-olds, think about it. Think about it. Help take care of those kids. They're going to be in schools, and lots of things get passed in schools. As a former county superintendent, I think I caught everything you could catch. So it was part of what. But the reason we're here today is to talk about a new program that you're doing on grief, and it's called Grief to Growth. But fascinating. We're going through COVID, a lot of grief.
Yeah.
Well, at church, what do we have? 20-some people passed away from COVID, and we couldn't do funerals.
Right.
Well, I want to ask you in a little bit, how do you do grief when you can't grieve So that's one thing we want to talk about. But I also wanted to know what got you into the idea of even doing a program on grief and doing a service like this to families.
Well, I think a lot of it comes from our personal stories. Both Kerry and I were both impacted by loss in 2015 by different ways.
Yeah.
And both married. I was married to my late wife for 26 years and had two beautiful girls. And we recently had moved to Fresno. We were serving in Orlando, Florida as a worship pastor and moved here. And just a few months later, she was diagnosed with a rare and aggressive type of breast cancer. And you're adjusting to life, a cross-country move. When they talk about those top 10 stress lists of what
many of them at once.
We did like all of them. And so cross-country move, change jobs, sell a home, try to sell a home, then
kids adjusting to a new location.
And so you're finding friends and all of who your tribe is.
Yes.
And then in the middle of that, she's diagnosed and goes into intense treatment. And I couldn't be more thankful for this Central Valley community, though, because I grew up in the Midwest. I was raised in the Midwest. And so for us, this is kind of like the Midwest.
Yeah. Mid-California.
Yep.
Is Midwest. Yeah.
And so it reminded us a lot of the people, and I think probably a lot of the agriculture and the things that are a part of this community. We just felt supported and loved, and even walking through the trials, we still felt that, it was, so that was for both, and Kerry's story is different, but it's, both of us are walking through something, knowing how we navigated, not that we navigate because you do the best you can and you walk through it, but understanding how people are hurting and grieving. If there's a way that we can help, not to tell them how to grieve, but give them some tools to say, we've walked this journey. We've done things that worked well. We've done other things that, hey, I'd do that differently.
Exactly.
But if we can help others through this process, then this is worth it. And so that's how Grief to Growth was born.
Gotcha. Well, how long did it take from the time your wife, you knew about it till the loss occurred?
So we learned of her. She was diagnosed on December 23rd of 2014.
Okay.
And she passed away in July 29th of 15.
It was aggressive.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it was
but still 7 months.
Right. And through that time, we didn't know that it had progressed until the week before. She finished chemo, went through intense chemo, and then found out on a Wednesday through her oncologist that said, unfortunately, this has spread, and 7 days later passed away.
Wow. And Kerry, your story is a little different. Can you share a little bit of what that was like? Because I know what happened, and it was a shock to the whole community.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about it.
Yeah. My late husband, Eddie, was a children's pastor at North Point Community Church. And and so we were there serving, and he was speaking at one of the adult services, one of the Sundays. It was November 22nd, 2015. And healthy guy, no ailments, no issues. And he was up speaking at the first service of 4 that he was going to speak that day, and talking about our, the children's building that we had, that was built, and just talking to excitement about, getting kids in there and teaching them about God. And then he walked off that first service, and he had a heart attack and passed away. And our world was rocked. I mean, I get a
How
call.
many kids?
We have 5 boys, and and so they were in ranges of 19 to 6 years old. So just a wide range of children.
Which meant you had a lot to deal with.
Yeah, and so it was just a shock to all of us. And for me, I just didn't, you sit there and go, so what am I supposed to do now? Okay, God, I just have to say, okay, God, you gotta carry us, because
Wow, so you went from 2, you went from 5 to now you have 7, and many of them heading to college.
Yeah. Yep.
So college is a regular daily budget item. For you.
It is.
Yeah. Well, and for our listeners, any of you who have gone through loss, this is the full spectrum from a long time illness to a sudden loss. I mean, how did you two end up getting together in this?
Well, we were both in counseling, and it was a friend of mine that called me. It was the week before Mary Beth passed away, and he said, "Hey, what are you doing next Thursday?" I'm like, "I don't even know what I'm doing in an hour." He goes, "You got a counseling appointment, and if you're not there, I'm going to know about it, and I'm going to come and get you."
That's a friend.
And so I started, which ended up being the week after she passed away. We didn't know.
Wow.
But started going through counseling, and that's actually how we met, because we were seeing the same therapist. So they'll ask, how did you meet? Therapy.
Let's pick that up. We're going to take a break here right now. Folks, I'll tell you, this is really good information. If you know someone who could be listening right now, call them up. If they're going through a loss of any kind, this is something they need to hear. And we're so glad that you're with us with Powell To The People, where civility is always in style. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Powell To The People. Write it down.
Good to talk. Right.
You guys want to just jump in?
Give me 1 minute.
Okay.
Yeah. So how's it feel?
Fine.
You guys are doing great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good. Well, let's pick it up with that same thing.
Okay.
So, all right, Jose, we're good to go. Line from that song that is so good is, no matter how much you plan it, it doesn't go the way you expect it to go. You were sharing with us, Matt. Tell us a little more about.
So we met. I was going through counseling, and if someone is going through loss, I tell you what, that has been just a huge help, because you're able to kind of work through some things. We ended up going to the same counselor, and ended up meeting through that, and it wasn't because it was we were looking for another partner.
Sure.
It was, we had common stories, and kind of our background. We both married at 19. Our late spouses served our married life in ministry, and just kind of how bizarre, both having tragic circumstances of, pastors being in kind of visible community roles.
Yeah.
And so that was just kind of a, talk and see what, how bizarre our lives were.
Well, it really is amazing when you think about it, because when you're going through grief, you're probably a little guarded, of releasing your heart, or that kind of thing as well. So how did you work through like all of those things, and then knowing you got kids, 5 boys and 2 girls?
Yeah.
How are they going to respond? Because our listeners that are going through this, I know, are probably going, how can you make that work?
Right.
You know?
Well, and,
Very carefully.
and it that was one thing that it was that following year that we had met, and part of that I was going through some transition in my life where my oldest daughter was getting ready to go down to Southern California. She went down to Biola for a little bit, but was staying with a family, was kind of nannying for a family down in Orange County. And so there were changes with that, and my youngest daughter being here, and we had a conversation that was, hey, Dad, I don't want you to put your life on hold, as hard as it is. I don't want you to put your life on hold for us. And the
kids came to you with this? Wow.
Now, and part of that was they were both at different stages of the things that one wanted to hold on to, the other needed change.
Sure.
And so it was navigating those items. And, and one line that my daughter had said was, now, Dad, I want to know about it because, if you're out in the public, someone will always come up and say hi, or they're going to
see who Dad was with.
and that was before we had met.
Wow.
When she had said that, but the line she goes, well, Dad, girls are crazy and women are just older girls.
Oh,
and so,
Oh my word.
I love it.
And a lot of it was them being protective.
Sure.
Of just going, if someone gets close to you, we want to know who they are and why.
Yeah.
And
they're going to be actively involved,
right,
in the family.
And I think that role as parents was and is significant to us, and anything that is going to jeopardize that is
Sure.
not worth adding that. The girls, at that stage, I was like, God willing, they're going to go on, they're going to get married, they'll have kids. And if we don't navigate this well, I could jeopardize a relationship not only with
Right.
my daughters, but potential grandkids and in the future. And so there was a lot at risk in that.
You're walking on glass and fire.
Yeah. And then you're in a church and everybody has an opinion about everything.
Yeah, they're all watching to see how you respond.
Yeah.
Well, how do you do that 5 times with 5 boys?
Oh, well, they weren't so much coming to me for anything like that. And it wasn't even on my radar. It was just,
No.
okay, God,
You're trying to get through.
Yeah, and I just was, there wasn't anything potentially about, someone had mentioned to me something about when you, at some point you're probably going to remarry, and I think I got sick to my stomach. It was like, that's not even an option right now.
Too soon.
Too soon to think about. And, it was very much a timing of what God, his plan and what his will was, because it wasn't something I was looking for. And I just, in my head, I had basically waved the white flag and said, okay, God, I'm just going to continue being mom and sometimes have to be dad when I'm having to teach a child how to shave because he's not here to do that. And those are some tough things that, you don't think about. But then saying, okay, I'm just going to raise the kids, continue doing that, be grandma, whatever it took, and maybe later down the road that might be. Yep. And then God had another plan. And you know what? I'm happy. I'm glad.
And it's different for everybody. My best friend was Larry Deaver, and he passed away in 2000. And his wife waited 15 years to remarry. Mm-hmm. So it's different for everybody because, and she loved the Lord, and things weren't ready at the time, and when it was ready, it was ready.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's a challenge. How do you guys help folks who come in with all of those questions? So tell me a little bit about your program, because Grief to Growth is a fantastic concept, because I don't think people feel after grief you can grow.
Right.
Know?
Well, and if I could say something that when you said about, this person waiting 15 years and everyone has a different path and everyone feels, it's different for them. It's the same with grief. Like not everybody's grief is the same.
Yeah.
Not everybody's steps are the same. Not everybody's thoughts, emotions, all of those things, they're not all the same. And so that's what we want people to understand. And, that everyone's is different. And if you can grasp that, then you can take it to that step of growing.
So how many do you have in a class?
So we did a class this fall. We had 50 that were a part of that class.
So you have 50 different perspectives.
Yes, and 50 different types of loss. Because initially people will look at it and go, well, that's for people who are widowed. Well, no, that's just people who have experienced loss. And so Grief to Growth, and our website is grieftogrowth.org. And you can go and check out, we have a podcast, we have different resources.
Right.
But Grief to Growth really is about helping those who have been impacted by the loss of someone or something significant in their lives.
Mm-hmm.
So we had people in the class that had lost a over 20-year career as an executive. We had some who lost a relationship that ended in divorce. So there have been losses that were attributed to death, but there are also losses that were attributed to types of non-death.
Right.
And so we did have people that...
And this works for everybody.
This is,
in any
yes.
kind of
yeah.
loss.
Yeah, this is when we look at it and say, well, there's a lot of grief support programs. Why do you do something like this? Why would you want to do this when there's a lot of other programs? And there are.
Mm-hmm.
And we cheer them on. We encourage people to be a part. This is...
In other words, there's enough work for everybody.
There is, yeah.
know?
You look in the news, how many things do you see right now talking about the need for mental health workers and programs? Even, I was going to refer a friend to a counselor, and he was like, I think I need to... And so I talked to the counselor and said, hey, where should I have them call? Well, I've got about a 6 to 8 week waiting list right now, but I'll try and work them in.
Wow.
So almost looking at this as can even be a sort of triage. We had people that lost spouses, but then there were younger that were, college age and young adults that lost parents. We had people that lost children, and extended loss of over 10 years that had lost. And so it's navigating different types of loss, but saying, we want to help you.
Sure.
This is about taking the next step forward. And that next step is different for every single person. And so the worst loss, this was a quote by H. Norman Wright, is the worst loss is the one that you are experiencing at this time. And so getting a plan of personal development, how to walk forward, how to move forward, and we go through those things as a part of this.
Wow. When you think about it, 50 people, 50 different things.
Mm-hmm.
It can be the loss of an individual, loss of a job, as you said, those kinds of things. You're navigating a whole lot of differences, but there are some commonalities. And
Yep.
when we get back, we're going to take a break here in a minute, but when we get back, I'd like to talk a little bit about what are the common things that happen for folks going through grief.
Right.
And that way you can begin to navigate if you know what you're going through, because I'm sure there are a lot that don't have any clue
Exactly.
what to do, where to go. Maybe we can help them with some of the things you're going to talk about. You're listening to Powell to the People, where civility is always in style, and we're so glad to have with us today a really good program, Grief to Growth. You're going to hear more from Matt and Kerry after we return.
You're listening to Powell to the People. Write it down. We'll
keep going. Good stuff.
Well, that's a great vehicle to be able to, because there's so many people that they don't know where to turn.
Absolutely.
And so they just like, I'm just going to knuckle down and just
Well, they
power
bury
through.
it.
But they bury it and then they don't, which only extends your
Exactly.
healing.
On the best talk in town.
Hey, one of the things, welcome back, I wanted to mention to you is that we have a lot of John Waynes. You know, they can kiss their horse, but can't tell their wife they love them. You know, so it's kind of a Kerry and Barry syndrome. And I was just wondering, how do you help folks identify what they're going through, what it means for them, you know, that kind of thing?
Well, we have with our in-person, and we're just getting ready for an upcoming 8-week session that's going to be happening, and that's going to be at People's Church, and we start on January 11th, and so it's 8 Tuesdays from 6:30 to 8.
It's a little over a week from now.
Yep.
So,
And so there's still time to get in and be a part of that, and they can just go to our website at grieftogrowth.org, and they can find more information and get signed up. But identifying those types of things, one aspect that we do is we talk about types of loss, and then we talk about the things that they may be, because there's some that may be going through some issues. We talk about disenfranchised grief is one of the topics that we use, and this is when someone might experience a loss, but others don't acknowledge that as important.
wow.
Or they feel like, you know, I really don't have the right to grieve. You know, I've talked with, it was one of Eddie's best friends, and I talked to him one day. We were talking and just said, hey, I would like to talk with you on our podcast about the loss that you went through and how this impacted, because a lot of it, he was like, well, you know, you kind of look at, well, they're the ones that are really grieving, but it impacts,
it cascades out.
it's, we talk about the ripple effect of grief and how, you know, you throw a stone in and you see that extend in both of our churches, you know, especially, I would say especially where Eddie was on staff and at North Point in town, how that impacted, because it was a sudden loss on a Sunday morning, and you have so many children, you know, so now parents are trying to talk to kids about grief and manage all of those things. And so, you know, it's letting people know, one, you have a right to grieve.
Yes.
And when you experience loss, this is your own personal journey. And so,
and nobody can go through it for you.
Yeah, unfortunately,
you know, it's yours.
Yeah, darn it.
Yeah.
going through our 8-week class, you know, it's also understanding the expectations, and people look at it with, it's only 8 weeks. Yes, this isn't a start to finish. This is setting out here are 8 aspects of your life, you know, whether it's, you know,
you're breaking
finances,
the ice for them a little bit.
You're
okay
setting.
Well,
sometimes it's so uncomfortable for people to talk about grief, and the ones that are, you know, have so many questions and they're walking through it, and then the people that they're like, well, what do we do? And that people don't have the answers, you know, and it's like, we're not afraid to talk about this because we've walked through loss, and but it's so important that people get the tools so that they can grow. And
well, one of the things I've noticed about both of you, you're free to talk about your spouses, your former spouses,
right?
Because they were a key part of your life,
right?
Yeah.
Some people feel, you know, do I need to stop that? Does that relationship stop? But it doesn't.
That can be so dangerous. And you know, I always tell people, if you feel like you have to hide your past life, because, you know, in our family, you know, in our home, we have pictures, there's pictures with Kerry and Eddie and the boys. There's pictures with me and Mary Beth and the girls.
That's really healthy.
And
yeah.
and it is not just about blending our lives together
Right.
and our kids, but then we're blending our late spouse's family, which is our family.
Grandmas and grandpas don't stop being.
Right.
Yeah.
For, Mary Beth has one brother, and then so in her family, that was important for me
Sure.
to say, hey, we need to come along in the process. I've known them since I was 14.
Wow.
They're my family just
And he doesn't
as
stop
much.
being an uncle.
No.
You know?
And so I think those are things now that we're entering into grandparent land and we're, embracing those. It was Mary Beth's brother that talked to me also before Kerry and I had met. And he goes, hey, I've known you since you were 14. You're my brother and you're always going to be my brother. At some point, you're going to meet someone.
Yeah.
And just so you know, they're going to be in our family as well.
Boy, that's
And-
a healthy move. That's great.
And you still go through those feelings
Sure.
of, going, okay, how do we walk past the awkwardness and you just hit it straight on? And I think that's what this program is. How do you set goals
Well,
that
and
even in the middle of grief?
Yeah, and I noticed as I was looking through the book, the copy you gave me, it's almost like an individual education plan. you
Right.
know?
Mhm.
It's targeted for each person and their own experience of
Right.
what they're going through, and helping them deal with that,
Yeah.
as opposed to here's a formula, good luck.
hmm
You know?
Yeah, what was so great is we were going through because we divided up into essentially 3 different segments.
Hmm.
There is what happened is the first third,
Right.
and that's how do you process your loss? What is loss? What consists of grief? Your emotions that go haywire in the process.
Yeah.
Then what now? And kind of finding your balance and just going, okay, life can really suck right now, and it's okay to, it's okay to admit that. It's okay to say that to God.
Well,
God is not going to be offended because you're ticked off.
well, everything is not okay.
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then in that last third is what's next. And we had some that were going, okay, we're going to set some goals. And there were some that decided, hey, I've been focusing on the loss of the memories that I've lost and missed out on.
Yes.
But as a result of this, I'm going to start making new memories with my kids. Some decided I'm going to get my health back in line and I'm going to start training for a 10K. There was another person that said, I set aside, because of my grief, I set aside a lot of the hobbies and interests. One was music. She said, I put aside music because I was grieving, and now I'm picking this back up.
Is that part of the process of people trying to say, I don't deserve to be happy?
Yeah, I think it's
guilt.
Guilt and,
Yeah.
all of that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think you're so overloaded and overwhelmed that it's like all you can do. Sometimes it's just all consuming. Just to go to the store. Some of the goals we talk about is, hey, one of the goals for this week, we have a in the back of their course notebook is a daily, here's some gratitude, areas of gratitude.
Yeah, I saw that. That's
Here's
good.
some things that you can go through. And then after that week is, here's my week 1 wins. And write down what is something that I was proud of myself because I did this. Sometimes it's going to the grocery store and making sure that your milk isn't expired in your fridge.
Sometimes it's just getting up and taking a shower.
Yes. Yes.
It's
Wow.
so simple, and it's not something that we ask them to make some big, huge, goals to set,
Right.
but that's also
Those
there
little
too.
ones
But the
lead to
little
the
ones, right?
succeeding.
I mean, for me, sometimes it was just making my bed when I got out of bed was a big goal, for
Right.
me to know that, I can keep moving.
My wife lost her sister suddenly to a heart attack, and which is unusual for women a lot of times, but they have more than people think.
Right.
More heart attacks, and that's been a long time for her. Almost a decade now, and it's still so fresh
Right.
in her mind. There was 6 years between she and her sister, but it's like it's very, very difficult.
Well, and that's in the book Experiencing Grief by H. Norman Wright. He talks about there's potentially no loss greater or unrecognized as the loss of a sibling, somebody that's been with you through all of your formative lives, and you've gone through that, and then not having that sibling is a huge impact.
Boy, it is. They're a part of you and have been for a long
Right.
time, and as a result, it makes it very, very
Yeah.
difficult. And I know we talk about her a lot so that she can get through
Right.
this kind of time and things. But when we come back, I want to ask you a question about: has anybody ever said to you some things that were inappropriate? As you're going through the loss, and they're well-intended people,
Right.
but they say some things that probably shouldn't be said. Well, listen, you're listening to Powell to the People, where civility is always in style, but we're with Matt and Kerry Perkins, and this is a really good program. You need to hear it if you're going through grief and a loss. Come and join us. We'll be back for our last segment here shortly.
You're listening to Powell to the People. Write it down.
Good to go?
This is Powell to the People on the best talk in town.
Boy, I
Here's Larry Powell.
love what Mark Lowry says. You're going to go through some tough times, but some things never change, and that's God's love. And I know for the two of you, loving the Lord, being Christians, helped you get through a lot of things. There are a lot of folks out there. Is this program also for those who don't know the Lord?
Absolutely.
Because I know it's associated with People's Church. You're part of that, but what about those that don't? And then I want to ask you a question when you get done with that.
And this is the things that we walk through, and we are putting together. This can work for someone that, if they are a person of faith, if they are not, and obviously our foundation is that as people of faith and serving in ministry, but our heart is to help people. And so people look at it and say, well, I'm not about that, or I'm not, I'm, of this faith or whatever. And we had people from multiple churches that was their background, different faiths, some that had no faith. And so while we will give, this is life development principles to allow you to take the next step. And in our lives, we equate a lot of things, even when we were dating, kind of looking at, okay, are we going to get married? Do we want to walk into this next step? And it was that image of a scavenger hunt. And when we try and figure out our lives, and we want to be 5 years down the road and have all the answers for that. And what I found is the only thing that I can control is what my next step is. Now, if you take that next step, then you're going to take another. And so it's about
you have to
saying,
take the first to get the second.
You do.
Yeah.
And, in a scavenger hunt, you can't, you have to, I'd like
Just
that
start with clue one.
Yeah.
Yep.
You can't go to
1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you try and skip it, there used to be that TV show, The Amazing Race, and people go all over the world and do that. People try and take the shortcuts. You try and and stuff your feelings. You
Yep.
try and shortcut grief. It's a pay now or pay later.
Yep.
And so you can walk through, embrace that grief. I wrote a blog post about, called it My Invisible Friend Named Grief. And some people were, oh, I'm not making friends with my grief. And it's not that, my long lost pal, but that friend shows up at every family dinner, at every holiday, at every anniversary
Memories
of
pop
a loss.
in,
You're sitting down and,
smell,
yep,
food choice.
there are things that bring it back, and you look and you're like, oh my gosh, we just came through the holidays.
Yeah.
And you have those times at Christmas, and there are different gifts, there are new traditions, there are gifts that you didn't buy that you are feeling the
Another
pain
loss.
of. Yeah. And you're trying to figure out, how do I do life now?
Right.
And so,
That reminds me of another question for you. Did well-intended people ever say something to you that was inappropriate? What was it like as you're going through this personal hurt, this loss? And I know people, I have a saying that a word once spoken can't be retrieved, and even though forgiven is not easily forgotten.
right.
And I'm sure you don't forget those kind of comments. You give some leeway, but has that happened to you?
Oh my gosh. Have you?
Yeah. It was just a few days after that he had passed away, and I was dropping my son off to something and for school, and then I saw this person, and they said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. We heard," and that it. People don't know what to say. I mean, we
Right.
do the same thing. You don't
Sure.
always know what to say, and so I'm like, "Oh, thank you," and there's all that. And then it was, it couldn't have happened to a better family. And you're like, huh?
Whoa.
And, in your mind.
Well, you're shocked to begin with.
Yeah, that's kind of was like, I think the look on my face gave the clue of, oh no, what did I just say?
I hope there's more to this
and
story.
So I just stood there and I said, well, and then she goes, well, you know what I mean? Like, and then she started, and it was like, I just, in my head, is the not so nice things I was thinking, but at the same time, I'm thinking, okay, God, help me to see what she's trying to say.
Right.
Not always do you have to say the most profound thing, but an I'm sorry is just
Boy,
enough.
That's really good advice.
It doesn't
Absolutely.
have to be. It doesn't have to be anything.
Because unless you've been through it, you can't
Yeah.
know it.
Right.
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 And
Right.
just I'm sorry, and if you need something, I'm there to help.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So-
Wow.
Yeah, I think
Pretty
the
amazing.
yeah.
I tell you, Carol, I'm surprised you handled it as well as you
Well,
did.
I
Carrie.
am too, but I think that was that fog and that still in shock and.
I hear you.
yeah, I think the sometimes it's you understand that sometimes the mouth engage before the brain
Yes.
you're like whoa, and people I know how you're feeling because I just went through and separated from my wife, and so I understand how you feel.
And it is a loss, but it's not the same kind of loss.
It is, yes. And when you're in the middle of it, you're like,
Yeah.
what do you do? But I think when people are walking through, they have walked through loss, and that loss of those who are walking through relationships, I understand that it can be sometimes worse than a death in some perspectives because it's like they
Still
have
see
no
'em.
closure.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like right there in front of them. And I think if you are walking with someone that is going through a loss, and you are a friend to someone who is grieving or is walking through loss, allow their grief to be seen. Don't have expectations. I would say, one, don't put if you're grieving, don't put unreasonable expectations on yourself And don't put unreasonable expectations on others,
No,
thinking
that's
that
good.
they're going to understand your
Right.
pain, because they have not that perspective. And if you're caring for someone, be there, allow them to their grief to be seen, and just be present
Right.
in their lives. You don't have to say anything.
Boy, I think that's so important that you're there for them and let them tell you what they need.
Right.
And if
Yeah.
they don't have anything to tell you right now,
Mhm.
be comfortable sitting in silence,
Right.
with them. Yep.
I have a horrible time. Like it's like accepting help. That was one of the things that. So there were people that would say, "Hey, is there anything you need, or if you need something?"
Yeah,
And I didn't even know what to tell them because I was in such a fog.
sure.
But then there was others that just said, "Hey, I know you like this. I don't know. Here's a
I'll
gift
bring it
card.
by. Yeah, whatever."
I'm on my way over. Get ready." And
I hear you.
Mhm.
Another quick area, is loss different for men versus women, and for old versus young, and for kids? Does your program Grief to Growth handle some of that?
Yeah, I think it's the biggest thing that we talk about is this is an individual journey. And so men are going to, every person is going to take a different approach.
Right.
For those who are younger, we're working on some materials to do. The Grief to Growth journal is for someone who's experienced the loss of a person in their lives. This is a great aspect of being able to journal and get through your feelings and express them, and there's
Right.
short prompts. But I would say yes. We've experienced in our own
Do you have
lives.
kids that come too? Can
Yes,
kids come?
we have. So we had younger, as in like young adult, that are going through. We are currently working on a teen version
Okay.
and bringing our kids into the process to help write this.
Well, one of the things that's happening is we've gone through almost an hour very, very quickly. Tell me just a couple of things real quick. What's your website? How do they hook up with you? And where do we go from here?
Yep. grieftogrowth.org.
Grieftogrowth.org.
grieftogrowth.org. And that has resources for our podcast. We talk about other information that is connected with our material.
I know you're doing an online.
Yep, we have an
Opportunity.
online course, and so if you're not in this area, you have family or friends that live in different parts of the country. We have podcast listeners and people that have been through things that are, Canada,
Right.
outside the country. But we have an online course, our podcast, the in-person. If you're in the Central Valley, we would love January 11th. We start, and it's 8 weeks. If you miss a couple weeks, we can bring you back up to speed on it. But I would just say, even if you're scared you don't even want to talk to someone, we're not going to make you share. We're not going to make you get up and tell all your stuff.
Yeah.
Just jump in, and you can email us through there if we can support you.
Wow. Remember, folks, that's grieftogrowth.org. Kerry and Matt, what a wonderful opportunity for you to help a lot of folks, especially post-holidays. We thank you so much for being a part of it. Don't forget, folks, grieftogrowth.org. You've been listening to Powell to the People, where civility is always in style. See you next week.
You're listening to Powell to the People.